That's it. Okay, all right. So this is the last panel.
Last month, I had the opportunity to speak on a panel as part of the Presidential Summit on Tourism, and the theme was Rethinking Tourism for Economic Growth and Job Creation. I was on the panel that was us diasporans who have moved back to Ghana and sharing our experiences. Check it out.
Okay. The final panel for the day is going to be moderated by the founder of Power to Girls Foundation. Her name is Aisha Ado. Aisha, come up on the stage, please, and take it over from here. And she will introduce her panelists.
Thank you, Kathy. Awesome. How's everyone feeling? Okay, thank you. I really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Awesome. So we have our final panel for the day, and I have some really amazing people that are going to be joining me. So if you can please give them a round of applause for Mr. Rabbi Cohen Halevi, Miss Videt Ajalolo, Mr. Diallo Sunbury, and Miss Ivy Prosper. Oh, please, they need to feel your love because they're about to give us some amazing wisdom. How's everyone feeling? Everyone is good? Awesome. Okay. Yes, everyone has a microphone. Awesome. So I just mentioned everyone's name, so I'm just gonna get everyone to introduce themselves and tell us what your link to the diaspora is, and also why did you choose Ghana as home? So Rabbi, we'll start with you.
Oh, thank you very much. First, acknowledging the presence of the Almighty who has blessed us all to be here today. And although our Chief of Staff is absent, so I also pay honor to her in regards, and to our minister, to our Nananum, all protocols observed. I'm Rabbi Kohen Netanya Halevi. My link with the diaspora is that I'm here today in my capacity as the convener of the Pan-African Diaspora Coalition. And that is a coalition of 9 different organizations and associations of diaspora repatriates who've come back here to Ghana to live, to work, to invest. And we've all come together to cooperate in a coalition to make sure that our voices are heard and impactful. So I happen to be the representative as the convener. And also, many of those in the audience know me in my capacity as the executive director of the PanAfrican Foundation that is now boasting 31 years and on the eve of about to celebrate our 15th edition.
Wow, impressive. So happy to have you here, Rabbi.
And I would say that what brought me to Ghana was the destiny of the Black Star. I'll keep it there until we get to the next phase.
I love that, definitely.
Hi, everyone. How's everyone doing? Good stuff. Thank you, Oshiamu Kwame. Thank you. Hi, my name is Videta Jololo. I'm the founder and CEO of Sota Charlie. So Sota Charlie is a curated experiences organization that is here in Ghana. We make it possible for diasporans and internationals to explore the continent of Ghana. Some of you may have seen Chance the Rapper at a waterfall. That was us. We've done some amazing partnerships with the likes of Africhella. Thank you guys very much. So that's what we do. We make it very possible for people to explore the continent of Africa in a fun and exciting way. To your next question, Aisha, why did I choose to come to Ghana? So I moved to Ghana 2 years ago. And I remember being 25, sitting on my bed in Hong Kong, where I worked as a banker. And I thought to myself, wow, I keep watching these videos by Wudemaya, who is probably one of the greatest exports for Ghana's tourism sphere. And I was like, I need to leave. What am I doing here? And I decided to take the jump and take the leap of faith to step into an industry that I am personally passionate about, which is the travel industry, because I felt like I had been traveling to other parts of the world, but I wasn't showcasing my country and my continent. So that was really one of the reasons why I decided to take the leap of faith. And I think that it's been a great journey. And I'm very proud that I'm actually part of the people who are trailblazing this cultural, historical revolution in the continent of Africa. Thank you.
Amazing. Mr. Diallo?
Yes. So, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Diallo Sunbury. In Ghana, I'm also known as Nana Kwabena Duku I. in Kosoheni of a small town called Yamebechre, just between Tinkon and Okrasi, on the N4 road. So just let me plug my little small town, because I have a village now and I like to rep where I'm from. So if you're driving to Koforidua on the road and you see this community center being built, that's a project that we are working on in Yamebechre. So when you have time, please come visit. We have the best contumere in Ghana, and we have the freshest air that's available to you. But I'm the president and CEO of the Adinkra Group. We are an African resource company, and we help connect people to the African continent, either through the arts, culture, business, and investment, both in America and here on the continent. I actually wasn't looking for Ghana. I think Ghana found me. You know, as a man, a father, a husband, I was in my life on a spiritual journey looking for spiritual discipline, and Ghana answered the question. And when Ghana answered that question, it came along with business, relationships, and other things. But I'm a proud son of all of Africa, but Ghana has claimed me as my spiritual home, and I'm also now a citizen. So I'm all in.
Awesome. Well, we love to hear it. Thank you so much. Miss Ivy?
My name is Ivy Prosper, and I was born in Ghana. We left when I was very young and moved to Canada. So I lived in Canada the majority of my life. I did spend a couple of years in the US going to college as well. And it was in 2011 when I initially came to Ghana for a couple of years. And at the time, I was working at, I worked at SOS College. I was in charge of a creative writing club for students after school. And I actually took my students to meet Ama Ata Adu. It was a really great experience for them, and may she rest in peace. And then I hosted a television show called the Maternal Health Channel TV series. It was on GTV and TV3. It aired 2013, 2014, and a bit of 2015. And we traveled around the country covering stories why women in Ghana have challenges during pregnancy and why there was a high maternal death rate in Ghana. So those 2 years experience, when my contract ended and I went back to Canada, I constantly was thinking about Ghana. Like I was thinking, you know, it wasn't so bad there. It was, you know, I felt like there was something that I was contributing and I could certainly come back and do something. So it was in 2016 when I left the job I was working and made the decision to come to Ghana. Like I sold things and then I shipped most of my stuff and then moved here. And so I have experience working in documentary film production. And then now I'm the social media manager of Ghana's Beyond the Return, formerly Year of Return campaigns under the Ghana Tourism Authority. And that's my journey to Ghana. And right now I'm fulfilling a purpose. I also create content on YouTube promoting Ghana to the world. And I've had so many people tell me that they moved to this country after watching some of my videos and also reading my book, Your Essential Guide on Moving to Ghana.
Wow, can we please give them a round of applause? We have a really intense panel here, and I'm really excited to hear a bit more about some of the things that you've all been working on. So Rabbi, I would love to start with you. You've been in Ghana for over 29 years. What would you describe in terms of like the historical connection between Ghana and the diaspora? And what are some of the lessons that you have taken from that experience that you would share with others that are interested in potentially moving back or investing in Ghana?
Thank you very much, and very good question. The historical connection, I think, is, as it goes way before Ghana itself. The historical connection is that the diaspora, which now is estimated to be over 350 million Africans that originated from the continent of Africa over a period of 400 years, is actually dates back as far as the first Africans leaving this continent by virtue of the North Atlantic slave trade, and certainly have never really given up the heart and the soul of the identification with Mother Africa. So there's definitely a historical reference that goes far beyond the time that we have here today to explore. So let me begin with at least Ghana. From Ghana's inception, we see, as I mentioned, the Black Star being a part of the destiny to call me back home here. Africans in the diaspora have been inspired and involved with Ghana since its independence. And so the historical fact that Ghana has more of the forts and dungeons along its coast than any other nation on the west coast of Africa says that millions of Africans actually exited from this continent via what was known as the former Gold Coast and Ghana. So as we witnessed a few years back with the year of return, and now in Beyond the Return, it resonated so much because it had historical content. It was easy to connect to that vision. And this is why we see, as the Minister of Tourism spoke yesterday, that the numbers of tourists arriving in this country, a significant number of those are coming from the African diaspora, specifically African Americans and Africans from the Caribbean, even during the COVID period. And it should be known that that is not in a vacuum. Not only is it something that we see as a result of the investment in the year of return and the vision of this government in the year of return and beyond the return, but Ghana, since its inception, as I said, with its first Prime Minister, President, Asajifo Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, I would say throughout the history of the Fourth Republic here in Ghana since 1992, which is the birth year of PanAfrican, and PanAfrican itself started off with its first theme was reuniting the African family and the reemergence of African civilization, because Ghana saw at that time, when it didn't have the confidence of foreign investors, that its natural partner was the diaspora. And if it can put together a program to invite the diaspora to come back and invest in Mother Africa, it can benefit the dividends from that. And so following that, we see in 1992, PanAfrican was initiated, 1998, Emancipation Day was initiated, 2007, the Joseph Project was thought of. We see 2019, the year of return, and now a decade dedicated to beyond the return. These are years, even decades of investment in the diaspora, so we see that that investment is not in vain, it is paying off, and the statistics are there to prove that. We have also in 2007, Ghana was the first country to host the Diaspora African Forum, DAF, a diplomatic mission empowered by the AU here in Ghana. Ghana is known for its Pan-African credentials.
Wow.
It is often imitated but never duplicated.
That is true.
It has a history. It has roots that no other African nation can actually they can say anything of. So it's important that we understand history so we keep continuity in place. Ghana has a solid foundation, and we must continue to build upon that foundation. So as you say, the historical relevance to what we're doing is very deep. So now, as we talk about economic and development, that 350 million Africans in the diaspora, if we just took the United States alone, its spending power is in the trillions.
Absolutely.
And once Africa embraces its sons and daughters in the diaspora, and they feel that they have that connection, and Mother Africa is calling them home, naturally they would look at strengthening Mother Africa, because Africans are realizing every day with the disrespect that we're receiving in foreign lands, that Africans, no matter where they exist in the world, will never be fully respected until Mother Africa is respected. And once Ghana has taken that lead to invite Africans back home, to tour, to invest, and even to live, we will see that they will get that message that Mother Africa is calling her sons and daughters home. The disenfranchised population will be re-enfranchised, and we'll be able to reap the benefits of that. So the teams that have been leaving here, government officials, all of them who've been going over promoting tourism, promoting investment in the diaspora, they're seeing the returns. And I will go further to say, if they would also recognize the diaspora who has also already responded to the call. There's over 10,000 diasporans who've come back home.
That is true.
We're living here in Ghana.
That is
We're
true.
investing in Ghana.
That is
We
true.
made a commitment to Ghana.
Yep.
And we also need to be outdoor. Ghana should use that as a trophy to show off, to say, look at the results of those who return home.
Thank
Look at
you
what they're
so
doing
much,
and look how they're
Rabbi.
living.
That, you have been here for it all, and we're so happy to have you to share that with us. But we're going to move on to you. Just piggyback of some of the things that Rabbi mentioned. How do you think the diaspora can contribute to building local capacities and transferring that knowledge to foster economic growth?
Firstly, I just want to kind of echo what Rabbi said. You know, we have 10,000 diaspora here. I am one of them. And I'm very proud that our business, Sota Charlie, has been able to make the impact that it has over such a short period of time. But to answer your question, I would use us as a case study. So how the diaspora is coming over and impacting economic growth as a result. So through business creation, at Sota Charlie, we have we were established 2.5 years ago. We saw an opportunity in the tourism space. The business was established in the middle of COVID. Contrary to popular opinion, people, when the decision was to start the business came about, everyone thought, what is wrong with you? Why would you start a business in the middle of the pandemic? But because of my insights into like social media and seeing how content can really gravitate people to a country, as per my my comments around people like Wodemaya, that decision was made, and over the course of 2.5 years, we've hired over 50 young people, Afro Gen Zs, as I like to call them, between the ages of 16 and 23 to work with us over the summer holidays, the Christmas holidays, and we're paying them somewhere between 20 to 25 times the daily minimum wage on a daily basis in our most peak season. So that just clearly shows that, the diaspora coming home, I myself using myself as a case study, is evidence of the fact that that can be done. When we come here, we are making impact. We're seeing things like the SDG 8, decent working conditions, economic, making sure that the working conditions we have for our people are good, and we're implementing it in our workspaces. That's an example of something that we've brought back. One thing I would say that I think is increasingly becoming a big thing on my agenda is sustainability and how we loop the local economy into some of this growth in tourism. Because often when we talk about tourism, it's very much dominated by the diaspora, right? And the truth is, if we don't loop in the local population, we're going to have a local population that is aggravated by the tourism that we're doing and the inflation that is causing in the country. So for me, when I think about what the diaspora can bring, places in the Western world have done a better job at sustainability in many cases because they understand the impact it has on their businesses. We're increasingly doing that in Africa. I've seen a lot of businesses that are bringing this at the forefront of the agenda. But for me, what is interesting is when the diaspora come in and say, hey, how can we improve sustainability? How can we improve the local population through the businesses that we do? And I think that that's a typical case study of when the diaspora steps in and increases the economic growth. Last point I will mention as well is that one of the things that tourism does that's very powerful is that tourism has a very interesting way of pooling people to gain economic capital. So the social, cultural knowledge and capital that they gain from coming to Afrochella and having a dance, going to Bloom Bar, or going to Cape Coast Castle, or going to the Accra Arts Center, is motivating people to eventually take the leap of faith to move back to Ghana, which is also indirectly improving our economic capital. So when I think of myself, I used to come back to Ghana in December just to go to Bloom Bar, to go and party and have a good time. But in the long term, I've decided to move to Ghana and build a business. That is the economic side. But the real reason I came here was the social, cultural element. And I think that that's the link between the diaspora making that economic growth possible through tourism. Thank you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that. We only have just a couple minutes left. So our next panelist, I would love it if your answers are sweet and impactful. But it's really interesting because we're moving from history, we're moving to local context, and we're bringing it back to you, Diallo, in terms of what are some of the unique skills and expertise that you think the diaspora specifically brings to Ghana, Ghana's economic landscape, and how can Ghana create an enabling environment to attract more diaspora investments to maximize our economic growth?
I just want to remind you that being short and sweet is not in our DNA. That's one thing I know about my ancestral memory.
I know, but
if I come to your house to eat, we can't be short and sweet. I have to sit, wait for water, and then talk. And then, okay,
I know, but today we have to activate those genes. Please.
Well, let me say that I'm not sure specifically when you talk about skills, whether you talk about hard skills, earned skills, or learned skills, if the diaspora actually has, the African diaspora actually has a specific, unique set of skills that could help in Ghana's economic landscape, right? Because if you meet someone who's an accountant, they're an accountant, the numbers always add up. If you meet someone who's a public administrator, you've trained and learned some of the same things. And if you meet someone who's in event planning, they probably all got their event planning certification from the same place. I think what the African diaspora has that impacts Ghana's economic landscape is something different, which I touched on in the beginning, which is ancestral memory. Most of us, when we engage in business opportunities, business activities, or when we come to that crossroads and we decide, what are we going to do with the rest of our life? Where are we going to spend our time? Where are we going to spend our energy? Where are we going to use the things that we've learned? It's either you're going to choose a place that's going to give you the best bottom line, and oftentimes that bottom line is the dollar. How can I get the greatest return on my investment to help my family, to take care of my children? Or you're going to choose something that could be something a little bit more impactful or meaningful to you. And that's what Africans in the diaspora have. African in the diasporas have an emotional attachment and an innate connection to the continent of Africa that gives you an ROI that cannot be defined by dollars, and really it can't be defined by impact. It's really defined by an underlying understanding that you're a spiritual being having a physical experience, and this fulfills your mission to God when you come, okay? I don't want that to go over your head because it's important, all right? Number two, I think in our education and in our planning, we've done a number of things and we've gained a number of things. I'm not as familiar with the UK educational system as I am with the US educational system, but you go to kindergarten, you go to elementary school, you go to middle school, you go to junior high school, you go to college, and then you get your bachelor's, and then you get your master's, and then you get your PhD, your DDS, your MD, or whatever. So over the course of this 12, 14-year indoctrination of education, what you're taught is strategic planning. You're taught how to follow up. And if you're an African diasporan or an African in America, there are some soft skills that you learn that are useful to Ghana in its economic development. Those things are perseverance, right? And sometimes we don't think about perseverance as a solid business skill, but you need perseverance to survive here, just the way you need perseverance to survive everywhere. What Africans in America have become experts in is making lemons out of lemonade. We are some of the few people in the world where to have started, to have been picked up somewhere 2,000 years after our origin and gone through a process of colonization and kind of being stripped down to then have to rebuild yourself back up to really kind of be models of the world where the rest of the world is kind of modeling and looking at you and marveling at your strength. Is that how are you still walking? How are you still doing this? So we've become masters at being successful in difficult situations. And as the time is moving around, and as Rabbi mentioned and as Vedetta has mentioned, there are more Africans in the diaspora that are deciding to come back to the continent of Africa. Those are some of the things that they'll bring. The last thing that I'll say is specifically for those of us who are educated in HBCUs, historical black colleges and universities, what we have is a connection to Africa where we were born, where we were raised and educated kind of in the same format, in the same community circumstance that we see communities here. So we have a distinct familiarity with the way that culture and protocol works here. So it's a learning curve that we don't necessarily have to start from the beginning when we come, because it's the same way in our communities back home. In our churches, in our HBCUs, we are raised the same way that I see communities being raised and reared here. Respect for your elders, big brother, big sister, and understanding that protocol sometimes can really be the definition of whether or not you succeed here or not. Peduase.
Thank you so very much. Can we please give it up for Mr. Diallo? We are going to move to you, Ivy, and then we are going to take some questions. So for those that have some questions, please get ready. What are some of the strategies or initiatives that are currently being implemented to foster collaboration and partnerships between Ghanaian businesses and the diaspora? So we've talked about the history, we've talked about the local context, we've talked about the experiences that the diaspora is bringing. Now we want to know what are some of the things that are being done, and this is basically extending your capacity in the beyond the return agenda.
Well, I would say that already from the fact that we have this beyond the return agenda happening, that's already fostering the collaborative efforts. It's already something that we're doing to encourage people to come to Ghana, whether it's to live, to invest, or just to come to visit. We have a lot of things that are happening that are all aligned with the pillars of Beyond the Return. A lot of people don't realize that there are 7 pillars for Beyond the Return. Many people think it is only about the events that are happening in December because it gets a lot of the media and a lot of the press and attention. But there are 7 pillars. For those who may not know, I'm just going to go through them really quickly. We have the Experience Ghana pillar, which focuses most on the experiences and the tourism aspect. And that's what a lot of the events in December are connected to. We have the Celebrate Ghana pillar, which is connected to celebrating the cultural festivities and traditions that we see in Ghana. We have Invest in Ghana, which is about learning about opportunities to invest in the country. There is Brand Ghana, which is about branding the country. We have Promoting Pan-African Heritage and Innovation, which is about Pan-Africanism, as well as the heritage sites that we often don't hear about, because everybody knows about Elmina and about Cape Coast, but some people don't know about Piquoro slave camp in the north. They don't know about Salaga. They may not know about the Golu slave defense wall. So about highlighting some of those sites that people may not know about. There is a Give Back Ghana, which is all about giving back to the community. The diaspora often wants to come and give back through various initiatives. And then we have the Diaspora Pathways to Ghana. I mentioned this last, it's not least, but it is a very important pillar because the diaspora is always looking for ways to, whether it's to live, to get citizenship, starting businesses. And that one is one where the government is currently working on the Homeland Return Act. And that one is specifically being designed for the purpose of helping the diaspora community be able to get citizenship faster than the current path that we have in place from the government. So it's currently in Parliament, it's being worked on. I don't know when it will be completed. I did meet with somebody recently who said it's on the 4th draft at the moment. So that is something that is key to helping foster relationships with the diaspora. The other one that I want to mention briefly, because I am working in digital media is so, so important. And a lot of people in Ghana don't realize how critical it is when it comes to engaging with the diaspora. The diaspora is not here, they're living abroad, and they're going online to find out what's happening in Ghana, what's happening on the continent. And it's through what you post, it's through the stories that you're telling that people are finding out what is going on and how they can come to Ghana, how can they do business, how can they meet with people, how they can collaborate. And this is what I do every single day on social media. So I think it's very important if you're a business owner and you're trying to collaborate with the diaspora, have an Instagram page, have a Twitter page, have a Facebook page. If you want to do YouTube, you can also have a YouTube page. Have a website, because a lot of the diaspora wants to use a website to search the legitimacy of a business if they want to collaborate. Check your emails, because we have a problem where businesses don't check their emails. So these are all things that as a local Ghanaian, if you want to collaborate with the diaspora, you have to be in these digital spaces if you want to be able to connect with them.
Amazing. Thank you so very much, Ms. Ivy. These are really good points, and I think it's been such an honor just hearing all of you share. We would definitely love to throw it to the audience if there are any questions. We only have room for 2 questions, so I guess we got our 2.
Thank you for such an amazing panel. Bear with me, I have some things to say. Slave, hostage. Slave owner, human trafficker. Slave catcher, police. Plantations, death camps. Mistresses, rape victims. Discipline, torture, murder. Overseers, tortures, trading, kidnapping, profit, theft, middle passage, genocide. Start replacing words commonly that we hear, read about slavery in our head. Bookmark this as a reference. Start using everyday words that are relevant to you in this day and age. Stop obscuring the horror with the detachment, antiquated euphemism terms. Slave families lived in plantations owned by white slave owners who hired overseers to maintain discipline. Black families were held hostage in death camps by white human traffickers who employed torture to torture and kill them. It sounds different. I won't go too deep, but my question is to the panel, how do we start to change the language here in Ghana specifically? I am tired of hearing slave. We're not slaves. We are descendants of enslaved African people, and I would like the language on the continent to be more reflective, to be more inclusive of the diaspora. As we promote tourism campaigns, it's the little things that we're hearing that are gonna make the difference in messaging. So words mean things, and let's be clear about the language that we're using going forward.
Hello, good afternoon. My name's Daphne Spencer. It's me again, sorry. I do have a question and a concern. I know that all of us in here are well informed, and when we have these conversations, they're on high level, right? And when we go back and we reintegrate in the community, we're dealing with people who have no idea these conversations are happening. I don't see law enforcement here. I don't see how they see their involvement in this whole movement, and I think that's concerning. In 2019, I came for the year of return. I brought my children for the first time because I wanted us to live here, and they enjoyed their stay. It was brief, it was 11 days, and we moved back. It's been almost 2 years. However, I've had minimal police encounter in America than I have here in Ghana, and that concerns me. I've gotten to a point where I would give money so I can go home to my children because they're not familiar with the country or languages and so on and so forth. We need to involve law enforcement in these conversations. Just like any organization, we need reputation management. And I think there are some things that are happening that is damaging exactly what we're trying to do or accomplish, right? So much effort has been put into this conversation. So much work is being done. So much success has happened. And we don't want that to be erased by someone's ignorance. So please, let's involve the right people. Let's make sure that the information is filtered through down to the ground level where everyone understands what the goal is, so their agenda will be agendering. Thank you.
Thank you. I actually pleaded with my lady to take my question for me, but she said, please, I might forget, so 30 seconds and I'm out of your way. Thank you. Please, my question is, how do we merge the diasporans with the local citizens? W. Du Bois is an example of his impact on Osagifo, Marcus Garvey, and all of that. Somebody like Miss Ivy here, I learned a lot from her. She's the one I photocopy on content creation and all of that. I believe with all your experience in the diaspora, if you are merged with the local community, there can be that, fusion and learning. How do we achieve that? Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Okay, so this is going to be rapid fire.
All right. Can I take the last question?
Okay, you can take the last question.
Okay.
Oh.
Let's answer and then you can.
No, I think
Yes,
one more question,
one more question.
and then we'll answer them all.
Thank you very much. My name is Rocky Dawuni, musician. Thank you. I'm also the UN Goodwill Ambassador for Environment. So when we are having conversations about tourism, I'm very keen in terms of the environment and the role that it plays. Because first of all, when we have people coming here, it's a perspective and perception thing. So a question that I want to throw to the panel is that what are some of the concrete things that we are collectively doing to make sure that, first of all, our beaches are clean, because beaches are one of their primary areas of attraction when people want to take holidays. We have an opportunity to compete with the Caribbean and a whole lot of other places who use their beaches as their selling points. So what if we are able to position ourselves to be one of these countries, then some of those issues need to be addressed. So I want to ask what we are doing, both individually, collectively, and institutionally, to be able to position Ghana as one of the countries with the most beautiful beaches, the cleanest beaches, and also the ultimate destination for people who want to enjoy the beach, the sunshine, and what Ghana offers. That's my question. Thank you
so very much, Mr. Dawuni. So we got 4 questions. Amazingly, we got 4 panelists. So each panelist, please answer 1 question, and remember, rapid fire.
I will take the third question around incorporating locals with diaspora. Actually, that's something that's really passionate to me. I think that sometimes, obviously, I'm very cognizant of the economic cost of things in Ghana, particularly in our most peak season, which is December. And obviously, as a result of that, sometimes that can really isolate our local communities. And as I touched on earlier, one of the things that is very important to me in my thought leadership journey is tourism for good, and thinking about how tourism can actually propel the local community and make the local community excited by the tourists that are visiting our countries. So in terms of, on a micro level, what I do in my organization is really making sure that when we have our groups that are coming and visiting the continent, we are picking young people who perhaps have typically not had exposure to either traveling or even people who are coming in from the diaspora. And this gives them the chance to actually connect and have some level of intercultural exchange. And I actually think that that's really important. Why? An example, a case study example is when it comes to trips to the slave castles. Excuse me, forgive me, but coming for the trips to Cape Coast Castle, Elmina Castle, you tend to realize that sometimes locals don't understand the language that they're using, and the fact that our friends from the diaspora or our brothers and sisters from the diaspora actually find this very impactful. So these kind of connections and them working together, leading these trips, leading these tours, allows them to have more empathy, and it means that they are now in the same setting together and kind of interacting to improve themselves as well as learn from each other, which is super important because for the diaspora, they also want to come and meet locals. Diaspora, by the way, if you have a restaurant, hotel, diaspora doesn't like the Western decorations you're doing. They want to see the local decorations, you know? So these things are very important to them when they're traveling. They want to see what it looks like to a local. They want to interact with locals. So for us as a business, we're making it possible through the team that we hire. And just a quick point, I think, Mr. Rocky, thank you for that challenge. I don't think that at Sota Charlie we have actually thought about what we're doing with the beaches and when we bring people, like what the beaches look like. So I will take that as a challenge to myself, and I'll tag you in our post when we go and do our beach clean with some of our guests. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so very much for that. Mr. Diallo, which question are you tackling?
I'm not going to answer any of the questions. I'm going to break the rules, but I promise I'm going to respect the space, okay? What I would like to say is there's a quote, and that quote is, everybody can't do everything, but if everybody does something, then everything will get done.
Facts.
One of the things that's really important in situations like this is that everybody understands their role, everybody understands their lane, and everybody understands what their job is. Sometimes if everybody's trying to do everything, again, nothing will get done because we keep bumping into each other, running into the same thing. So the people whose jobs it is to keep the beaches clean, keep the beaches clean. We need you to make sure that the beaches stay clean because that's important to tourism. And when you see it and when you understand how every small piece connects to the larger piece, then you'll see how important it is for you to do your particular job. What I did want to do is I did want to add, I'll touch on the part about the language. One of the things that needs to happen and that's happening as the diaspora comes to connect with the continent of Ghana is we're beginning to learn and understand each other's experiences, right? Because there are two sides to that colonization coin. And if you're not on the side that was shackled, right, and transported, and you can't identify your great-great-grandmother's village, and you can no longer speak whatever that native language is, and you've chosen to identify with Ghana, even though genetically you might have come from Cameroon or Sierra Leone or someplace else, that language is going to mean something a lot more to you. Because I cringe every time I hear slave. Because when you say slave, you're telling me that my spirit is a slave, that I've always been a slave, that this definition is who I am, not a situation or something that has happened to me. But words will always mean things, and then the words will also have an effect on you according to your experience in life. So it's one of those things that I think it is important for us to be conscious about, and it is important for us to deal with about. For example, I've been doing this with my left hand the whole time. It's very improper, and I just saw it, and I said, the same way language is, so I'm switching to my right because I'm not supposed to be pointing with my left hand. I could be fined in some places, right? The last thing I'll say is I'll do not a shameless plug, but I'll do a large plug. On June 15th, on BET Plus, there will be a series coming out. I had an opportunity to host Ms. Gabrielle Union and her husband, Dwayne Wade, Miami Heat basketball star, during their 2-day experience in Ghana. And it was filmed to be a part of Gabrielle Union's 50th birthday celebration called An African Odyssey. I want to thank Ghana Tourism Authority for its partnership with that, which allowing them to come and film the country and to show an experience that I think is going to touch millions of people. So millions of people are going to see 2 very high-level, A-level black entertainment celebrities come to Ghana for 2 days and only do cultural things. And this is the experience that they wanted, and I'm happy that timing worked out for it to happen. The last thing I'll say is sometimes we want to give people the things that we have here because we want to show off our modernity. We want to show off the rooftops. We want to show off the fact that you can get Veuve Clicquot Brut or Rosé, right? You can get any kind of champagne you want. Our steak and shrimp tastes just like your steak and shrimp. But many of the people who are coming here from the diaspora, they have that already. And what they want is the things that they are missing. You want to come to Yame Betchede with me on the roadside and drink apetiche instead of champagne. Or you want to ask yourself, why is the palm wine cold without ice? It's just cold in a calabash covered by a cloth, right? So remember that people who are coming here, they actually want what Ghana has to offer. They don't want the things that Ghana is offering that are emulating the things from the West. They want to understand Kente. And I'm sorry, I got to take one more thing. People in Ghana and in Africa in general, let's start valuing our own self. Africa should not be cheap. Ghana should not be cheap. These things don't have to be expensive. So you want me to pay $2,000 for a Louis Vuitton bag that was made in China that cost $15 to make, but you want me to sell kente that's hand woven for weave and takes 2 weeks to actually make by hand, but you want me to sell that for cheap and for expensive. Let's stop saying that things should be inexpensive when it comes to Africa. Why should it be cheap or inexpensive for people to come here and visit? What is the value that we are placing on who we are, on our history, on what it is that we have to offer, and on the ultimate underlining experience that people have when they come here? So it's more valuable for you to just have a good time than it is for something that will enrich your entire life. Let's just really think about value and what it is that we're offering to people. I apologize. I told you I would break the rules, but I would respect the space. I'm done.
No, that was a really valid point, and definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much for sharing. Rabbi Ivy, do you have anything else to add?
I do.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
also good. I'm
Very.
also
So remember, rapid fire. So rapid fire is a minute or less. Okay, please.
One thing I've learned in life is when you have an opportunity, you take it. Because I was on a panel in New York City, an international panel, and I was cut short with what I wanted to say, and I'm not going to allow that to happen to me
No, you're not going to get cut short. I'm just letting you know that we're standing between the lunch.
Because this is very important to me, because I moved to Ghana. I could easily go back to Canada. I could easily be making more money in 1 week than I make in a whole month here, but I'm here to fulfill a purpose of changing the narrative of Africa. And so I think that one of the things that people like me have a responsibility to do, when you are a Ghanaian who has moved back, we have a different dynamic and a different experience when we return. And I think it's people like me who can help to bridge the gap in a different way than perhaps an African American or a Caribbean would. So for instance, number one, I have to say I am so grateful to my mother. So grateful. And if you're a parent in here and you're not teaching your children to speak a Ghanaian language, you're doing them a disservice. When I speak Tree, yes, I have an accent when I speak Tree, but I can, and I can understand people when they speak it around me. And I think because of that advantage, when I meet local Ghanaians in different spaces, it gives me the opportunity to communicate certain things. So when I may be talking to, let's say, a taxi driver, and we're talking about something, and they're trying to express themselves in English and they're struggling, I just tell them, please, just speak Tree if you can't say it in English. Just speak Tree because I'll understand you. And I think that those opportunities give me a chance to bridge the gap. When I meet young people, I believe change happens one person at a time, one conversation at a time. I was in Cape Coast recently, and I met a young girl in a hotel, and she was working, and I wanted to give her some advice because she told me her dream was to be an entrepreneur, but she didn't know how to do it. So I used that as an opportunity to have a conversation with her about how to become an entrepreneur when you're a young 20-year-old girl and you don't know what to do. I told her, have you checked? Do you know what GIPC is? Do you know what the Ghana Investment Promotion Center is? Do you know who the Ghana Export Promotion Authority is? I was naming things to her, and she was like, no, reach out to them. They love to hear from young people. Learn something from them. Find out what networking events are happening and attend them. When people like me or other people on the panel speak to these young people, then they learn, oh, this is what I need to do. It's not just always just sit back and say, oh, I don't know anybody. It's who you know, and I don't know anybody. Make an effort to meet somebody so then you know somebody. So I use that as an opportunity. Also, I thank my mom for, I'm giving my mom props today. I thank my mom for making us living in Canada learn about the African American experience. We had to watch PBS specials about what was happening with African Americans' struggle during the civil rights era. The city I grew up in, St. Catharines, Harriet Tubman went to a church there, and it's actually a monument, a historical monument. I learned about the struggle of African Americans, and it resulted in me having an empathy for them. When I write captions on our social media pages, I write enslaved Africans, captured enslaved Africans, descendants of enslaved Africans, because I understand that that language is very important because they were captured and they were enslaved. So we don't make decisions, but I currently have partnered with an organization called Maeko, and we just had a beach cleanup a couple of weeks ago. So I think on the individual level, we can do those types of things. Thank you so much for having me on the panel today, by the way. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Ivy. Rabbi, final thoughts?
Thank you. Going last, and most of my colleagues have touched on all of these issues, but I would like to reinforce this whole idea of the language, and Ivy just spoke of it. It took some years before we were able to even get into the American system and get the academics and the educational system to change that word of slaves, African slaves, to enslaved Africans. That was the beginning of the humanization process of every African captured on this continent, for those who don't know. Because if we were allowed to keep our names and be identified in our original identities, nobody could have been successful in enslaving a free human being who still had his dignity. And the dignity is taken away once the identity is taken away. So sometimes I have an opportunity to do some experiences with our dungeons. And some of us have been engaged with not even calling them castles. We say forts and dungeons because words have power. And I tell them I don't give tours, I give experiences. Because it's not some fascination that we have with some regular object when we go through those dungeons. And I tell them not one single African American was captured here. Not one single Jamaican, Trinidadian, Panamanian was captured here. We were captured in our original identities as African people who had identities. And the first thing they did to take away our humanity was to take away our African identity. So it's important that we reverse the colonial language and we reverse the language that was used to enslave a free people. Because African Americans and Africans in the diaspora who've been misnamed into new identities were mistreated because they were Africans. And so when we come home, there has to be a system of empowerment and acceptance that we are coming back home as we left here as part of the African family. So our institutions that are here, we must begin to see the obligation and the responsibility of using the institutions that we have to start changing our mind and changing our consciousness, because that's the true beginning of where we will make a difference. Our educational curriculums must be looked at. We can't have a child going through 12 years of educational indoctrination and cover 2 pages on enslavement and colonialism. We can't have tests that are coming from WIAC that starts off with what were the benefits of colonialism. If we don't get to the bottom of these things, we cannot have the transformation that we need to empower ourselves as Africans, adding value on ourselves and knowing that we have the potential to be commanders and masters of our own destiny. When we look at the interaction, again, that we need to take place between Africans in the diaspora and Africans on the continent. Now today, I think over 200,000 Ghanaians now have American citizenship. That took place over the last quarter of a century, 25 years. Look up the statistics. That means more Africans are living amongst Africans in the Americas who've been there historically that now understand the dynamics and the experience. Many of them are saying, I didn't even realize that I was a black man until I got to America and realized now I'm being classified and facing many of the experiences and discrimination now that I'm living on American soil. So we are now beginning to understand ourselves much better than we ever have in the last 400 years, and we need to understand that we are one people with one destiny, and that's what Pan-Africanism is all about. So the institutions that we have in place, we must use them. This is why PANAFEST was created. We brought the remains of 2 ancestors from across the Atlantic Ocean, one from Jamaica called Crystal, one from the United States, the African burial ground called Samuel Carson in 1998 to show the connection. We created a tourism site called The Last Bath in Lassine Monceau to bring this relationship together. As I said, 25 years will be celebrated this year. We have PANAFEST 31 years. It was to reunite the African family. We have colloquiums, we have discussions, we have workshops, we have performances, all to create a platform for dialogue to bring this family together. As I said, we have a diplomatic mission here, the Diaspora African Forum. You know, during the George Floyd murder case, Ghana was the only African country that sent a message through its president. Through its president, our current president here right now sent a message of solidarity. At the funeral of George Floyd that was read out, Ghana was on the map. It made an impact because an African leader, an African president, an African country showed solidarity with what was happening with the brothers and sisters in the diaspora. We had the AU for the first time sent a solidarity message. He happened to be a Ghanaian, the vice chair, Akwesi Korte, who sent a message. So we have to see ourselves as one people and be able to support each other. There has not been one single African independent movement on the African continent to free itself from colonialism that Africans in the diaspora were not protesting at the UN and other relevant bodies and embassies to say Africa must be free. So if the Africans in the diaspora have a voice to speak up for African freedom, Africa must find her voice to speak up for Africans in the diaspora. Amazing. That's how we bring this African family together. Nobody should be able to touch a single African on the African continent without all Africans everywhere we are on any continent speaking up about don't touch the African. No African anywhere in the diaspora should be touched without every African on the continent say, you touch my brother and my sister. You cannot touch a European Jewish person anywhere in the world without every Jew all over the world speaking up for the dignity of those people. And we don't have to apologize for being proud about ourselves. We must put the value on ourselves, and people will follow that lead. If we devalue ourselves, people will also follow that lead. So our destiny is in our own hands. So let's take it and move to the finish line.
Thank you so much, Rabbi. Can we please give a round of applause to the rest of our amazing panelists? Thank you. It's been great. And I think one of the key messages is stay true to yourself and do not forget your African roots. Thank you so very much. Over to you.
Thank you so much. That was just a perfect way to end today's second day of the Presidential Summit on Tourism. Yeah, nice photo for all of you. Ivy, please join them. You're part of them. Yes. Okay. Let me also join them. Thank you so much. And I will now bring on a former president of the Ghana Association of Writers and the Apejahini of